Well, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. And today we're here to talk about India's economy, the path to $10 trillion. And I'm happy to see that a few of the GDP contributors are already sitting to my left. But Amarendu, if I could start off the discussion with you. You represent an industry without which there's nothing when it comes to infrastructure. Tell me, how do you envision India knocking on the doors of $10 trillion as an economy roadmap?
I'll just give you an example of what is happening in my company, and that will represent something. Even President Trump, we talk about him a lot in these times, said that if you don't have steel, you don't have a country. He went as far as that in his first tenure, and now he's doing something to steel again in his country. In my company, in recent times, what we have been talking about is you get an audience, put a number on the board as a target. If the whole audience is not laughing at you, then your target is too small. So we talked about 5 trillion economy, India reaching a 5 trillion economy barely 3 years back, and there were so much skepticism around it, so many people were laughing at that goal. And today we are on the cusp of achieving 5 trillion much before 2030, probably 2020, as early as 27. So to me, this 10 trillion economy target is something that the audience is not laughing. And so I feel that they are serious about this. We are confident of this. If I tell you about the steel industry, it is at 180 million ton capacity in India, slated to grow to 330 million ton capacity in next 5 years. That's the kind of ambition that the industry has. Logistics is improving. The infrastructure in the country is demanding this. In fact, in 2017, India set up a national steel policy, and we said by 2030, we want to get to 300 million ton. And as steel makers, we laughed. Frankly speaking, let me admit that we laughed. That 300 million ton in India, at that time we were barely at 80 million ton. And we said by 2030 as a joke. Today, we revised our target. 3 months back, we sat down and revised our target and said, no, by 2030, not 300, but 330 million. So that's the kind of growth which is happening. The demand elasticity is amazing. Last year, Indian steel grew at 14%. Against a GDP growth of 6.5 to 7%. This year, it is already in the first 10 months, it has already grown at 11%. So that's the kind of inflection point that we are seeing in terms of pace and quantum. So we are quite confident of the 10 trillion.
Yeah, and no one laughed at all. So it's totally believable, all that you said. But Santosh, you cater to an industry where you're catering to the aspiring India, right? Who doesn't want to own a Merc here, and Benz, like you said, in South India, right? Yeah. Exactly. I remember our conversation. What challenges do you foresee? Or do you think that, the automotive industry, and especially the premium segment, can play a huge role in India galloping ahead?
So firstly, let me also share a few numbers like the steel industry. We are 30 years in India, and there has been a big question, when will the inflection point come up? But in these 30 years, we have sold close to 2 lakh cars. And but if you now dissect that, and if you see in the last 10 years, we have done 1,50,000 out of the 2 lakh cars have come in the last 10 years. And the last 1 lakh car have come in the last 5 to 6 years. So you can imagine that's the trajectory of growth. It has multiple signals. One is it shows, luxury consumption starts when necessity ends, right? So in that sense, consumers are rewarding themselves. There is a way to also dissect this segment, because for us, 25% of the sales are coming from cars costing more than 1.5 crores. 60% of sales are cars which are in the region of 70 lakhs to a crore. And average selling prices have gone up from 50, 60 lakhs to 95 lakhs. So if you see not only the number, but also look at the structure of the car sales, it clearly shows that luxury consumption is there. It is a reflection in some extent of the economy and how aspirations in India are going. Looking forward, there is something, of course, we all expect this to continue because fundamentally, structurally, infrastructure-wise, we don't see, we only see more positive upsides to it. And then coming back to the manufacturing side of this business, because that's a consumer demand, we also feel that, now this ongoing discussions of opening up borders, opening up, this should help India not only to participate, also for brands like us, not just to look at India's story, but also to see what can we do for the world in terms of manufacturing and exporting. So I think we are pretty confident. We have been strategically patient for 30 years. The last 6-7 years has been a role, and we expect this party to continue, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. One can see that in your smile, that the party is here to stay. But Kami, that's where you come, right? Because like Santosh mentioned, that, the borders are getting completely sort of invisible, if you will. That's where the supply chain dynamics of India and how we leverage onto this globalization and, one big world theme comes into play. Tell me, what's been your reading?
Sure. I think I'll start by saying that we see a tremendous growth opportunity in India. And as a facilitator of global trade, close to $2 trillion of goods processed through our network every year. And we also have a ringside view of some of the changes in global supply chains, some of the shifts that we are seeing. And it is very clear that there is a definitive interest from global businesses in setting up manufacturing and export operations from India. We're also, of course, seeing a lot of Indian businesses going global, including the small and medium segment, which is increasingly exploring international markets. So for our India business, we are growing at 50% year over year, and we expect our business to double in the next 3 years. And with the government's focus on reducing logistics costs and making manufacturing more competitive, we think this will get even further accelerated, this growth that we are seeing. So, we are making investments in capacity to carry volumes from India to Europe and to the US and to Asia, and also inbound from Asia to India. And we launched a freighter from Guangzhou in China to Bangalore in South India in November, and it was full on the first day. And, so some of the other investments we're making are in infrastructure with respect to our gateway facilities in Delhi and Bangalore. Last year, we launched a state-of-the-art hub in Dubai to facilitate the regional imports and exports, but India is a big driver of that. We're also looking to see how we can simplify cross-border trade. And especially for small and medium businesses, and even for larger enterprises, there are lots of frictions in cross-border trade. And I'll give you an example. The import process into India has been very complex because of clearance. And so we've launched a digital tool called FedEx Import Tool, which enables customers to upload all of their documents. We use AI to process them, and they can make duties and taxes payments via the portal. So it really simplifies and makes the customer experience much better. We're also looking at how can we offer a single solution for all shipping, international shipping needs, whether you're looking at Air Express, which is for time-sensitive products, or Air Freight, which is less time-sensitive but still has to fly on air, and then Ocean Freight, which is more price-sensitive and less time-sensitive. So we've launched a single tech platform, which we call FedEx One Stop Solution, which enables customers to ship across the spectrum and have full visibility across the spectrum. So we are very optimistic about this potential that we are seeing in India, and I think it is at an inflection point, and we're really seeing this take off significantly.
Neeraj, you're at the other end of the India consumption story. At Suntory Global, what's been your reading right now as to, where the Alcobev industry is when it comes to India? I mean, I know a lot of them are actually making the headlines as the world #1 single malts, both in ranking as well as prices, perhaps. But what's been your observation?
Well, I think the Alcobev world, or the spirits world as we call it, is looking at India with a lot of cheer. I think that's what I'd say. It hasn't been an easy category around the world in the last 12 months, given various machinations of tariffs and the world we live in. As consumers come into this category of legal drinking age, and consumers who choose to drink moderately, we see a massive shift. A shift in the premiumization story, India being on absolutely the foremost of that story. With our median age of 27, I think every boardroom around the world looks at India in different categories and different sectors. But Suntory in India has been balancing between what does it take for us to be native and make in India and participate in that Imagine India story. On the other hand, when I look at and hear Santosh talking about growth coming across certain segments, with our brands from Japan like Yamazaki or Hibiki, or even our bourbons from the United States, the Jim Beam, we see a path and a participation for every of this brand. When I then look at the channel is undergoing a massive shift. Right from stores and the experiences of stores when you walk in, no less than in the best of the duty free you would find in Gurgaon, in our neighborhood, in Mumbai, in Hyderabad and Bangalore. We see the bars coming through, which is engaging with very, very meaningful experiences, personalized experiences with consumers. So I think across channel, across the segments of consumers, across the premium portfolio, this story is still clearly on a big cheer. Now, with big cheer comes big responsibility. I think it's equally important that the company and Suntory is looking at the India growth to that massive 10 trillion economy with a lot of responsibility. We owe it to our consumers, we owe it to our suppliers. Sustainability is important for us as we look at usage of PET or greenhouse gas emissions. So kind of that's part of that. But from a consumer perspective, I think there is a lot which is ongoing in India. And Suntory has now in the last 5 years established about 25-26% growth year on year, which is great compared to some of the other markets in the world.
That's the thing, right, Amarendra? Because policy framework and policy sustainability, I think, is very key for India to reach that $10 trillion goal, right? What are your thoughts?
Absolutely. Policy certainty, definitely, because you see, for example, the steel industry has a gestation period. Today, if I decide on an investment, it will take me 4 years before I can start producing. So having a policy sustainability is important to us. But at the same time, I'd like to point out one thing, that as we open up, as India reforms and goes forward, we have seen a shift from a compliance mentality to an outcome-based mentality. It's typical. And I come from a public sector company. The government is the largest investor in my company. And I see a shift from being compliance-based, I have done everything right, I'm not at fault mentality, to what have I achieved mentality. Have I delivered the outcome that we wanted to achieve? So the government reforms, many of the policies of the government we have found which are reforming in the positive direction. To give you a sense of how much confidence it generates in the industry, I'll tell you, last 7 years, we have been running after Indian Railways to say that how much rail track will you buy from us? Should we put up a new mill? Should I make an investment into a new mill which will produce good rails for you? Will you buy it? And we wanted a comfort letter. And Railways have, as a consumer does, always denied. They said, I'm not going to give you any comfort about what I'll buy in future. And this month, last week, we decided to put up a 800 million USD investment into a mill, because I'm confident that Railways will go nowhere and they will have to buy from me if I put up a mill. So I have taken a decision like that. So that's the kind of confidence that comes when the policies we know are growth oriented and they are bound to continue. There will be no reversal unless and until there is some kind of a doomsday prediction is different. But normally, if you are walking a path, it's irreversible and you will walk on that.
Coming for a player such as you, also policy certainty must be a very sort of imperative point, right?
No, absolutely. I think there has been a very progressive vision around logistics, regulation and policy with respect to, the Gati Shakti Master Plan, the National Logistics Policy, the ULIP platform, and so forth. And I think we need to continue to accelerate implementation of this program. I also think there is opportunity to, facilitate trade even more. For example, removing limits on the express courier clearance for exports, bringing more products into that program and creating a single window clearance across different partner agencies for approvals and so forth. And one of the things we are looking to do in India, given all of the volume growth I talked about, is to set up an air cargo hub. Like I said, right now, Dubai is our air cargo hub for the region, but we would love to set up a hub in India, which will be the first of its kind in the country. And I think for that, there needs to be certain regulatory changes that come up in terms of transshipments, regulations, screening, customs, and also airport infrastructure. So I think those are some of the things where a focus on these aspects will help accelerate, from the policy front as well.
Amredu, any figures to match the kind of vision that Kami just talked about?
Yes, I think she is right on the numbers because you see one of the key things, and we have seen this across India, and it is not just about the steel industry or anything. You see, as the roads have got better in India and the penetration of rail and road network inside the country increasing, you will find, I come from a small village near Nepal border in Bihar. I was born there. The village that I had seen and the village that I see today after 30 years, there is an amazing change. Nothing has come, no industry has come there, no investment has come there. They just have a national highway passing right by the side of the village, and that has changed the economy of the village. That's the kind of inclusivity that infrastructure brings in, logistics brings in. Coming to a larger scale, when I produce 1 ton of steel, I need to move 3.5 tons of raw materials. So you can imagine the kind of logistics and infrastructure that we require. We look forward to that number. As I said, the steel industry is quite bullish as India is being built up. Naturally, the logistics requirement will build up, the supply chain requirement will build up, and I think Kami is right in her numbers.
Yeah. Sorry, you wanted to make a point.
I think one of the other enablers to this is going to be technology. And we have started on that path with the ULIP platform and the idea of digitizing end-to-end. And, when you talk about supply chain resiliency, we need to be able to leverage data and technology. And we need to be able to leverage AI, machine learning, to use historical data to see where we can predict delays and put in place interventions and so on. And we're doing a lot of work with that. We have a product called Surround that uses historical data and including, data on weather. So that we can put in place interventions to enable our customers to deal with the volatility and the disruptions that we've seen, and especially in the past few years due to a variety of factors. We're also working closely with the IITs. We have centers of excellence in both IIT Madras and IIT Bombay for creating the future of supply chains from both a smarter supply chain point of view as well as a sustainability point of view. And there is great research going on there with over 40 projects led by, world-class professors. So we are very optimistic about the industry-academia partnership as well to create the right technological innovations to support smarter supply chains.
Santosh, I recall when we were chatting 2 years back and I asked you, what's the future of cars? And you said technology. That was your only answer. That, it's not going to be about whether it's hybrid, diesel, this, that, EV or anything. It's just going to be about technology. Do you think India has that kind of bandwidth to actually leverage and make the cars of the future?
No, for sure. If you see, cars are shifting to software-defined cars now, and already Indian OEMs are on that path with electrified cars as well. Same applies for us as well. All the new cars, we just had the Delhi Motor Show. We showed a car which is completely based on a software-defined platform. Let me also say that, we have another unit in India in Bangalore where there are around 10,000 engineers working for software-defined vehicles for the world. So, and I keep saying this, that, we feel proud that there is an India in every Mercedes sold around the world. Because these engineers are working just not on the software of the cars or just coding, but they are also, we have a lot of patents, more than 500 patents filed out of India for Mercedes-Benz. So I think a lot of proprietary work happening out of India, a lot of work happening on digital twins, on AI as well. So this is I think the sweet spot, because I think on the engineering side, we have the global macroeconomic challenges with also trade not as free as it used to be. But I think when it comes to software, when it comes to technology, here we can cross borders much faster. And I think this also for the sector, to your specific question, I think the Indian auto industry is also really taking this up fast. We will see a range of software-defined cars. The other point here also, electrification is one trend, but autonomous, again, it's always said that India cannot have autonomous cars, with the kind of traffic, with the kind of situation. But I think there would be use cases with the infrastructure coming up. If we can borrow time for our mobile phones while driving cars, and the car can take care of itself. I think it's coming quite close. Already in some of our cars, we just launched the E-Class. You can do a Teams call. There are selfie cameras. But the risk is always safety, because again, we have high number of incidents. So if the car is able to do a bit more and takes control even for the traffic situation, even when you are in the traffic jams, and you can actually use that time not just for work but also for catching up with family, also is possible. So I think technology is going much more deeper than we think, even in automotive area, and India again has this chance with the skill as well as with, I think it's a level playing field when it comes to technology, and India can participate much faster in this.
Are you pushing
This
us
is
for a
real
90-hour work
life-
week by any chance, by making cars which are going to make us work more perhaps? No, right?
As I said, you can catch up with family as well. When you are in the car.
You also said
going-
Teams call and selfie
Both
cameras.
ways.
I got a
Both
little
ways.
worried.
One real life example, I was just, till 5 years back, probably, when you decided to buy a car, the first question on your mind was, mileage kitna deti hai, right? In India, probably, that was the question. Mileage kitna deti hai? I had an experience 3 months back with a friend in Helsinki, Finland, was buying a car, and we were just discussing, and I asked, what are the key factors in your mind? They said, we are trying to decide which car has which features of the software, and whether Mercedes offers a better software package, or whether BYD is offering a better software. That was the decision-making point behind buying a car. So that's the role of technology coming into our lives every day.
Absolutely. So is it BYD or Mark?
Different segments, we are in the luxury segment.
Yes, you wanted to.
No, I just want to add the context of human connections here. Technology, of course, is absolutely driving the world, and this is disruptive tech. When I look back at the category which I represent, which is spirits and beverages generally, I think India adds an Australia every year in legal drinking age. India adds perhaps half of many countries in the world. And at the end, when we look at the path to 10 trillion and the growth prospects, I think the consumer at the center, and having this balance between deep AI and AI running the business, but consumer interactions and the human touch not going away, I think is going to be an important other element of how we look at. There is not going to be too long a time when perhaps all you would need is a thinking mode or a pill to feel a little cheerful. You don't even need alcohol, or you don't need any beverage. So we are moving in that direction as we look at things to come. But at the very heart of all of this is human connections. And I think as we bring more consumers, the importance of growth has to be balanced with also using that AI technology in a home, in a DIY experience in your bar, or maybe when you're having a nice time with friends and family, if you choose to drink. But I think that's been one big balance of priorities for us when we look at growth and segments, because that's going to be an important element of how consumers relate to this category, especially Gen Z. Skibidi has to be in this conversation, right, somewhere, because that is where people want to have quality of life. There's a very, very high dividend on quality of life. Consumers will choose to use or not use any beverage. Sugar or calories are all part of today's generative narrative. So it's an interesting cusp when technology, life science, just the prospect of having a good time, but in safe environments is going to be driving our path forward. So just want to bring that human touch into this conversation as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And how would you say that the Indian consumer, the alcobev consumer, from a in heart, just a single malt drinking India that we traditionally had maybe about 20 years back. How has the consumer evolved? What's been your experience?
This is fascinating. The consumer today is all about repertoire, and a repertoire of having a beverage in the day, moving to an evening sundowner, going to a nightcap, or I think there is, I would say 2 points. A point about the types of consumer. The new Gen Z or the legal drinking age is not necessarily only about single malts or whiskeys. They would like to have a quality product which allows them to mingle and be safe and get back home in a nice cheerful form. On the other hand, you have the luxury consumer. I mean, we've added 94 billionaires in the last year. And I think we are second to the US on the list of billionaires. And that's a very enhanced, customized personal experience. So what is going to be relevant for that consumer is going to be very different from a 26-year-old young first jobber drinking and wanting to have a good time with friends. So when we look at our repertoire, we've got bourbons from the US, we've got Indian whiskey, a brand called Oaksmith, which is successfully launched 4 years ago. We've got Lafroig and Bowmore, which are Scotch single malts. We've got Yamazaki and Hibiki coming together. And the challenge for us and our marketing teams is what in our brand portfolio resonates with what occasion in that repertoire of that consumer. So it's an interesting balance of act.
Amrita, you already talked about as to how various sectors, and you rightfully gave the example of railways, for instance, need to come together, and only then can India achieve that $10 trillion goal. That must be an imperative, right? And especially for the industry that you belong to.
Absolutely. I just mentioned for making 1 ton of steel, I need to move 3.5 tons of raw material in. For when I make a steel plant, I need to get a city around it for people living there. So you need sanitation. Imagine my company today practically owns and manages 13 cities and townships combined. So we are the mayor we are the sanitation worker there. Everything, schools, education, hospitality, everything. So it is all woven together. If I look at the supply side, again, if I'm putting up a steel plant, I need spares. For that, I need to get to MSMEs to build quality spares. So that means as soon as I put up one job in a steel plant, generates 7 jobs across the economy. Everybody has to come together. The incoming suppliers also have to come together. So we are today talking about setting up steel plants and getting industrial clusters close to the steel plant. We will, for putting up a steel plant of, say, 5 million ton size, I'll need 400 megawatt power. So that means you are going to build a power plant. So the technologies, for example, BHEL or GE or others, ABB, need to come in and set up those power plants for us. So that, again, one thing that we need to remember in this whole process, and I wanted to bring this in, while India is growing and we are saying we are building an India, advanced India, Viksit Bharat and everything, you need to remember 3 things. You are not going to build an India for a decade. We will not build an India today and after 10 years we are again rebuilding another India over that because the infrastructure that we put in place is not long lasting. So quality becomes a very important part of what India you are bringing in. So the norms and the quality controls have to be very strict, very strong. That is something that we are working on. And that's why if the steel plant is there, if the MSME is not up to that quality, the suppliers are not of the same quality. If the fabricators, after I produce the steel, the fabricators are not of the right kind to provide the right infrastructure there, it will all collapse. So we need to work on multiple points, and if all stakeholders need to come together while building this India for centuries, not for decades.
Yeah. And Kami, you were making that point, right? That it can't be just the top of the pyramid. It has to be bottom up, starting off from MSMEs, starting off from grassroots.
Yeah, absolutely. And what we have found is in the last couple of years, we launched a cluster strategy. So we identified clusters either on geographical or industrial lines. And so examples would be for, the automotive and leather cluster in Vellore in South India, or the home furnishings cluster in Delhi, or food and spices and so on. And we offer customized solutions for these clusters, pickups, deliveries, clearance, pricing, and also work with small and medium businesses from a knowledge sharing and mentoring and sharing of best practices point of view. And this has been a very popular effort in our customer base because we are really seeing a lot of exchange of ideas amongst SMEs. We are seeing a lot of interest in exploring markets and learnings from peers and experts on what are some of the pitfalls, how do you address them. And of course, we share our best practices from around the world as well in terms of shipping and logistics. We've also partnered with Invest India on the One District, One Product program. So across 750 districts in India and 1,200 products or so, working with SMEs on packaging, inventory management, and so forth. So we think this is going to be a big driver of the growth going forward, the SME segment.
Santosh, shouldn't be a problem for you, right? You're catering to the top end of the pyramid. The aspirant Indian always wants a Merc or a Benz.
Yeah, but I think for us as well, we have, when I said we have 200,000 cars on road, we have also parts to be supplied. The logistics setup that now we have set up in Pune and now also coming up with warehouses. And actually automotive also, like steel and many industries, there are enough studies to say that one car sold or one vehicle sold generates 14 jobs. So I think if all these sectors now are on the growth path, the 10 trillion where you started with should not be the biggest of the challenge. But it won't come by itself. I always feel that I have been in the industry now for close to 24 years. To now at this juncture to say that it will happen by itself also would be a fallacy. So I think industry on one side, the stakeholders, policymakers, we are on the right track, but we need to keep this momentum to make it happen as well.
Okay, on that positive note and the buzzer, thank you all of you for being part of this discussion, and I'm sure we're going to make it to that $10 trillion vision of the government very soon. Thank you all of you.
Yes, the path has been set for the creation of a $10 trillion economy. The vision set is all there. Our panelists, Amarendu Prakash, Santosh Iyer, Kami Vishwanathan, and Neeraj Kumar. Thank you all for joining us, and Aisha, thank you indeed for conducting that.